Snip. My name is Gabe Bartalos. I'm a special makeup effects artist. I got into makeup effects through my love of fantasy films and was fascinated by the filmmaking process and then the artistry behind makeup effects, which my favorite films had both of that going on. And I grew up in New York, and shortly after I moved to Los Angeles, had the good fortune of continuing to work on a string of films, and one of them, while working with a company called Real Effects, was called The Lamp, or it came out as The Outing, and that was shooting in Houston, Texas. And near the very end of that project, Tom Savini, who I knew from the East Coast, reached out and let me know that he was shooting Chainsaw 2, or prepping it, in Austin. And I said, well, I happen to be closer to you than you realize. And I jumped at the chance. Being a fan of Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 1, I thought, how exciting, especially since Tobe Hooper was directing the sequel and Tom Savini was doing the effects. I thought this was a perfect combination. I was excited to be a part of it.
They can't do this! They can't do this! They can't do this!
Well, I don't know if much of the production crew knew that tonally the film was going to be that different. There wasn't a complete script to read at that point. There was infamously scenes being rewritten that were significant chapters of the film while we were going. A lot of the effects had to be laid out, and both Toby and Tom were smart enough to say, leave those as gospel so we know what to build. But the narrative was changing a lot. And you know, we were actually building and prepping everything in Texas, not out of state. So we were closer to the shoot than usual. But even in those little windows that you drop in on, it's hard to get the tone of the film. We definitely saw there was some big, crazed bravado stuff going on between the exciting performance of Bill Moseley, and the sets themselves spoke to the bigger character of the film. But there wasn't any real guess how zany, in a sense, a lot of the film was going to be. I'd never met Tobe Hooper before, but I was excited to. You know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1 is still an amazing film. And the grittiness, the rawness, the independent aspect of it is like they leaned into that so well. It is a very uncomfortable film, and you know, I like referencing how interesting the sound is in that film, or the absence of it. It really creates the vacuum of terror that resonates through that whole film. So, no, one of the interesting things about working on that film was knowing that Tobe Hooper was doing the sequel, and it was just going to be cool to see him in action. You know, when you are on set with a director and you're curious about them, you could instantly learn a lot from watching how they command the set, how they treat people, basically how decisive or how their brain works. You're right next to them, so you see it fast. And that's always exciting. And I was interested to see, okay, the guy who made this first film, this is neat to be on set to see the second film happening.
You're my fave.
Tom Savini has his home base in Pittsburgh. And with Tom, he doesn't focus on the industrial aspects of makeup effects like Los Angeles has larger studios. It's more industrialized. Tom has played it more independently and would travel to where the need would be, and this was no different than that. It was definitely Tom Savini as the ringleader. We were 5, 6 of us were there to support him. Us all being very proportionately younger. And, you know, Tom just cast an amazingly great shadow. He's such a strong personality, such a good guy.
You have to buy me a new plate cover! You have to buy me a new plate cover, Leatherface! Oh!
He's a really good person to lead a project. And I think makeup effects is such a good fit for him, because I always thought makeup effects is a perfect balance of art, science, fun character types, and Tom amplifies all of that. So speaking for myself and easily everyone else, we were all excited to be there to serve Tom as the makeup effects department serving Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2.
Give me that. Turned traitor for a piece of tail.
You know, it'd be interesting to know if Tom Savini had discussions with Tobe Hooper about the flavor of the film, the tone of it, how conscious Tobe even was of that, because there's so many stages to a film. The written word, shooting it, the editorial, making sure the studio, the people who put the money are happy, you know, their fingertips can get in there too and things can change, so.
Chili.
No secret, it's the meat. Don't skimp on the meat.
Tom had set up in an industrial building pretty close to set, a workshop. My duties were kind of supporting everything. I ran the foam rubber on the film, made a lot of molds, went on set a few times with different effects. So doing a little of everything, supporting everyone. Tom had given a lot of the primary effects to different people, and kind of everyone cross-pollinated to support each person doing their effect. One of the fun things about makeup effects is there are so many different skill sets that are happening. There's the life casting, there's sculpture, there's mold making, there's painting, all the cosmetic stuff, taking it to set if you happen to be around. Down the hallway, we had a room set up that was temperature controlled, and I had 2 medium-sized ovens. All the molds were made out of something called UltraCal 30. It's a high-temperature cement, and would run the foam. A new piece of foam rubber is used each day. So these sets were consistently run, and when I would put them in the oven, they would bake for 3 hours. Then I'd be back on the shop. And I remember one of the funner things was John Vulich, who was doing the grandpa makeup. He did this great design, great sculpture, and me and him are big fans of Dick Smith makeups and of the age makeups, and especially how Dick Smith would consider where to separate the pieces and make those decisions on where the appliances end and transition. So John and I went down that rabbit hole and had a lot of fun where I helped him making all the positives of it. And that was fun because when the artwork is done, it's where the tech part of it is really important. And it was nice because Tom kept the whole team of us all the way through. So when shooting came and people were a good fit for a specific effect, we would go out on set. My first day on set was the night shoot, which is the opening of the film, when those 2 guys on the phone get cut up and stuff. So we were doing some puppeteering of one of the heads being sawed off, and that was fun because there I could specifically watch Tobe directing, and so it was great. It was nice to be part of something and you follow all the way through with it, from the lab work and then you're on the set with it. I think unless you're there with the creatives and the executives, you never know why scenes have been removed. I know the scene with the jocks and the attack was a pretty big sequence, and I know it was taken out of there. I remember Tom was discussing, Tom built a harness on me because I was going to be one of the football players who gets his head sliced with a chainsaw. But there were effects made for that. There were severed limbs. There was a really graphic effect of a screaming victim whose head was chainsawed. I don't know why that whole scene was removed, and it's strange thinking about it because that scene is almost like a microcosm of the themes of Texas Chainsaw, the kind of us against them. The real people versus the posers, the super saturated with wealth and identity. And it's strange because in a way, in my mind, it's all there in one sequence. And it's like, I think, well, it also leads to, I think, why Texas Chainsaw 2 and 1 are celebrated, that it really wears on its sleeve the kind of division of social classes. Like, I think any of us in makeup effects and filmmaking who love genre stuff, we're this kind of healthy broken, you know? we're like the best damaged goods there are.
Giddy up!
Chainsaw 2 drips of that attitude, of these ridiculous, they're pointing at the yuppies and the really culture conscious and, you know, great disposable people. So it would be really interesting to know why that scene was removed. To me, it thematically bundled it all into one little sequence. There was a castmate of the actor. I think we made multiple heads. There was a plaster core that represented the human skull, and inside of that was condoms, blood bags, real animal innards, all put under pressure from a back plate. The idea is that the chainsaw hit it. I mean, the chainsaw itself was real, so the violent ripping of it was pretty graphic. But as it tore all the shrapnel and everything, it looked great. It'd be interesting to see that whole sequence cleanly edited in color timed and all that.
Oh, boy, okay, yeah, sure.
It was nice overlapping with Bill Moseley. Sean McEnroe was doing that makeup. And a lot of times the maintenance and the removal, I would jump in and help. So, you know, it's a wonderful time to bond with an actor. You have this captive audience, and either you get along with them or you don't. Bill is wildly funny and really easy to get along with, and it is actually very much of the pedigree of all of us effects people. So there was very easy, comfortable overlap of dark humor and absurdity.
Slap me fine.
Caroline Williams was great, and it's neat because I've worked with her a couple times, and, you know, she gets all the accolades she should appropriately, but I also think people are missing that she's celebrated so much because she does it so well. And that means that the talent is making it look easy. And if you really think about what she was doing, none of that was easy. And I think that shows what a trooper she was and how big her acting range is, because when it was shut off and she was relaxing, she was charming, she was hilarious, she was just giving. And then when the cameras rolled, you know, you're in a pretty dark place, and the amount of screaming and sobbing and just the weathering on her, that is hugely taxing. And she never, ever fractionally let any of that go. It was always perfect through the whole thing. And I mean, it's great that everyone says she's great, but if you were there and saw what she went through, she was really great.
Real funny guys. Okay, you want to hang up now?
We overlapped with Dennis Hopper a little bit. I think after hours, we were in these little three level condos where everyone was housed. I remember one night we were just hanging out having beers, and Dennis Hopper came out, and we were like, hey, what a beard. He's like, taking it easy on that stuff. We're like, understood. A new chapter for you.
Boys, boys, boys.
Yeah, it's fun when people you've seen in films, you know, that, you know, have their own world. It's cool to overlap with them on a film. And even in Chainsaw 2, we weren't working closely with Dennis Hopper at all, but you're there watching him, and that's a pleasure. We saw that, the big chainsaw through the body, more as a physical effect. That's, I think, what made that clever was how the physical effects guys rigged it. Sean sculpted in the last minute this giant torso piece that was just Velcro strapped to the body, and we put some blood tubes in there. So yeah, he had to turn it on a little there, and he was close to the flying gore. I really liked what Gino Crognali did with the LG makeup. And there was a moment where I think it was an additive element where they decided to have the skinned part of his face, it's put on Caroline. But at one point, it's put on his face. And I think when we tested it in the shop before the day of the makeup, I think it struck us all how nice the artwork was that Gino did, how it all came together. And then on set, it was amplified even more. I think I liked it because it was really demented thematically. It was just a weird thing to write. and it came off looking really good. And it was also kind of sad. It's a sad scene, so you're feeling these really weird emotions. They're all extremes clashing. So I think if I had to pick one favorite effect, that stood out to me for a lot of good reasons. I'm sure there were production issues and challenges that Tom had to deal with as the boss, but it didn't trickle down. And in fact, Tom is so entertaining and so determined to have a good time doing what he likes that it's really contagious, and it's really, it's wonderful working with him. And you know, I was super conscious of Tom's trajectory, and it was like each film became more monumental in the horror and gore genre. And, you know, like after Day of the Dead, you're like, where can this go? And I had visited that set a few times, and it was just like, you know, so epic. And then it's like, where does it go? It goes to Texas Chainsaw 2. So I know a few of us were really excited just from that. Like, man, this is like the Mount Everest of stuff. And again, for Tom's trajectory, it was another step up. So it was really exciting to be a part of that.
Man builds a good sturdy trade by hooking and crooking. And then, kerplooey! The gods just kick him right in the balls.
I was probably guilty of what a lot of people's initial response was when I first saw it, because I think I was stuck in the vibrations of the first film. And I thought this would just be a higher energy, brighter colored version of it, with maybe more sophisticated gore effects, courtesy of Tom and team.
Hey, lick my plate, you dog dick!
So I think I was thrown a little when I saw it. I don't know, maybe a year or two later, it's almost like that film liberated a lot of other filmmakers to start swinging bigger. Because whether it was from other films that also got wilder, for whatever reason, in me it started to click. And the way it differentiated itself is actually what I started to get excited about. I didn't need to see the same stuff that I could tell you what it is when I see the poster. Everything was a curveball in this film, and that actually became a giant breath of fresh air. And then it became even more kind of miraculous to me, like, wow, that's quite a chance to take. And pretty amazing that he pulled it off, because it is successful in its bizarre vibe. It's so consistent in its off-kilterness.
That's fair, dude. You've done it again!
So, the film is done, and we're back in Los Angeles. And I don't know if I've spoken about this before. So if I have, those who've heard it, that's what you have a remote control for. Those who haven't, we ordered crew jackets. And back in LA, once the film was over, I started seeing some of the guys with the crew jackets. I'm like, I didn't get my phone call. Where's my crew jacket? So I call the company and they go, Mr. Bartalos. Well, we have a problem. I go, what? And they go, Lionel Richie came by our warehouse while we were fulfilling this order, delivering the jackets. And he said, I like this style of jacket. And he held it up and he showed his production manager. And they said, cool. And he goes, I'm going to take this as a sample. They go, well, you can't. It's customized. It says his name on it. He goes, I'll bring it right back. Give us a day. And they go, okay. So Lionel Richie picked up my jacket and left and never returned it. So I had to wait a couple extra weeks. So Lionel Richie out there has my coat somewhere in some weird closet, right? Whatever Lionel Richie's closets look like. In that third one, in the downstairs where he never goes, on the rack on the left of touring stuff, is my chainsaw jacket.